everybody. We are coming at you once again from Liberty Collingswood in remote locations. Pat, we had failure to lift off last time because of Wi-Fi on my end, so I am broadcasting from my guest room in my house, which doubles as one of my two boys' college crash pad when he's back. But how are you, my friend?
I love it. I'm doing well. And I was going to like kind of before we like really got things going here, recount a story about this past Sunday,
Please do.
and some technical troubles we had. Not that that's the story. And they pop up from time to time. We have a great audio team, but
Hmm.
the the gods of audio just rear their ugly head from time to time. But everything was going well as far as like the live stream and setting that up, and then all of a sudden the Wi-Fi cut out. The
Mm.
Wi-Fi at the church may or may not be very reliable at times. And
Whew.
so it was, 11:02. It's like, all right, service starts 11:15. We're fine. 11:04. Okay. 11:07, 11:10, 11:11. I'm not sure if at one point you may have seen me like kind of walk towards you and you were talking to Amy Phelps, but I was like, well, I don't think really Jim can do anything at this point in time. I think it's either just I'm going to sink or
Yeah.
swim. And so I kind of just did some random troubleshooting. And then right at 11:15, it kicked on. Nothing I did in that moment made it happen. It just went on. Otherwise, we weren't going to have a live stream. I was like, all right, well, that's it for the day.
Wow.
I don't have to do the camera. So I was gonna mention that, but then I didn't want to jinx our podcast. But it turns out that the jinx, having it in my head, already jinxed it. Apparently,
Woo. I
yeah,
had I had no idea. Wow. I was just fat, dumb, and happy on Sunday morning,
that's right.
and everything went swimmingly. So in our previous intro, Pat, we had talked through a certain quarterback, not Jalen Hurts, but somebody else. I will leave our audio listeners guessing as to who we may have been talking about earlier.
There we go.
But we're gonna talk word and world if that's okay with you in the audience. Sound good, Pat?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so from this past Sunday, we were preaching from Royal Plural, the Isaiah chapter 40, the first 11 verses, and we're kind of going through the different week themes, WEEK themes of Advent. And we were in peace this past week, which I enjoyed talking about from the sermon passage, Comfort, Comfort, my people says your God. And yeah, let's talk about peace one more time for a couple minutes here. Thinking through the idea of peace from the perspective of this is something that God is doing in Jesus that gives true peace, shalom, the Hebrew word, from the outside into a world that's broken, sad, sinful, and hurting. And sort of the triad that I talked through, Pat, was we should look up more than digging down and looking around. So let's revisit that just for a couple more minutes. The art I used a quote, and I think I got this from one of the commentaries from Isaiah that I was looking at for preparation for the sermon. Frederick Buechner, is that somebody that you're familiar with versus not?
No.
Okay. So you gave me, what was the pop culture book that you referenced last week? I did add it to my list, but I'm blanking out on it.
Oh,
The
Witness Against the Beast.
Yes,
Yes. Yeah.
very good. So Frederick Buechner he died a couple of years ago, was a Presbyterian minister. He may have his theologically he may have been a little fuzzier than maybe me, but on the other hand, he was really good at engaging culture and was a little bit of like a 60s and 70s beatnik. So he had a writing career as a critic as well as being a minister. I'm not jealous or anything, but thinking about how looking to God for hope and God's calling us home resonates with us. He said, no matter how much the world shatters us to pieces, we carry inside us a vision of wholeness that we sense as our true home and that beckons us. So when I was going through the commentary work on Isaiah, that quote from Buechner spoke to me, where our world can be shattered to pieces, but we still carry this vision of wholeness inside of ourselves. And when we look up, and see what God is doing in Jesus, there is a sense of being called home. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that, and um, it kind of weirdly got me thinking about the movie Interstellar, like that,
Oh, interesting.
and in like a very like not related way, but
Hmm.
how kind of like they kind of left the dirt, they left like the dying Earth to kind of like for looking for, they look for another planet to live on. This
Hmm.
planet's dying, but it was like,
Spoiler.
yeah, so it's 11 years old.
Yeah.
But like they look for like hope, inspiration, like in the stars, like up above.
Hmm.
And so,
Huh.
yeah, and kind of like how you were talking about, less focus on kind of like the day to day, the monotony, the trials, the tribulations, down there in the nitty gritty. It's like, more so look up to the sky, to
Hmm.
Jesus for kind of like that hope.
Huh.
And kind of how, peace comes with kind of like letting go of all that, letting go of all like the concerns. I mean,
Hmm.
in some ways, letting go of, what's happening and the day to day troubles, that'll always be there and kind of just instead looking somewhere else.
Yeah. I like that. Amen. I lift my eyes up to the hills. From where does my hope come? And another connection there, more recently than Interstellar, I've read a couple of things over the past, I guess, half a year on Elon Musk. And I don't know if among our listeners, Elon is your public enemy number one or your hero, but a couple of think pieces about how Elon Musk's endgame, even though he dabbles in politics and dojish type activities, his real endgame is getting to Mars. And all of what he's planning, what he hopes for, is so that the human race can continue on Mars. And as I understand the Martian gambit, I think part of the fascination for me with Elon Musk is Mars kind of doesn't make any sense at all as
No.
a
It's a,
destination.
it's a horrible planet to live on. It makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah. You've seen the first Running Man, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Arnold, yeah.
Oh, wait, no, I'm thinking what was the one set on Mars? Total
Total
Recall.
Recall. Yeah, Total
Yeah.
Recall. Yeah.
Okay.
Also
Which
Arnold
has
there.
also been remade. Not as well.
Yeah.
Do you remember the scene at the end of Total Recall when the bad guy, this is another spoiler alert, goes out, is put out to Mars and his head both implodes and explodes claymation style at the end of the movie?
No, I don't remember that. I don't remember that explosion, but it sounds awesome.
Okay. That's what we're looking at Mars. And why for somebody so love him or hate him does have an eccentric brilliance to him, putting all of his eggs in the basket of something that the monumentally it seems like the juice is not worth the squeeze
Hmm.
of getting of getting to Mars. All of that is to say, it's possible to construe that as a counterfeit impulse to look up
Hmm.
and recognize that whatever hope and peace that we can generate, the chances of it actually coming from us, from our own soil, from our own people, is nil. So we need help from the outside. And the better looking up than Mars is what God is doing in Jesus. And so there is a come home aspect according to how God has built us in the image of God to looking up. And then the two alternatives that I mentioned, digging down and looking around, the we should always pay attention to what we feel and not ignore it. But if we think that the all of our answers and total truth is going to come from the inside of us, we're also deluding ourselves where the sometimes I'm the problem. And if this cultural moment has doubled down on the digging down, sometimes we need to say that that's also an endless reduction of more of me, more of me, more of me, which doesn't necessarily get me any closer to the truth than if I simply stop thinking about myself so
Yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah. You think about it, like the more you're involved in things, the more you kind of screw it up. So it's like maybe I
Yeah.
should, whether it's you're like thinking about you or just doing things or having your world revolve around you, really the more you're kind of like proactively involved in your own life, kind of the more you're going to screw it up in some ways. And I don't know like
Yeah.
the tangible way that you kind of like actually fundamentally step back from like centering your life on you. Like
Hmm.
there's that's like a kind of like a heady concept in some ways. Like how do you extract yourself from your own life? But like to the extent that you can like focus more on God and and be less selfish and less self-centered, like you're just gonna get more comfort from above.
Yeah. I think that's true. Or not that people actually do this, but just as a confirmatory test, if Pat, you and I are talking to a friend who says, I've been going, I've started going to therapy to kind of go back into my history and past to try to figure out things about myself. I think both of us would say, "Oh, good for you. That's a good thing." But then if that same person would say, "In fact, I have been spending 40 hours a week in therapy for the past 5 years, continuing to excavate my past and present feelings," we'd say, "Huh, maybe you should get outside more." And that's the conundrum, right there. And unless you would recommend that course of dropping everything and only going in that direction for 5 years.
I don't think so, no.
Okay. And then the other thing, and this is one of those things where, hey, was this too obvious for me to say, but then maybe not. We can try. Shout out to a band from the 60s to get by with a little help from our friends. But if that's the full solution, looking around to other people like us to give us complete hope and help and peace also maybe doesn't seem like the complete solution at the same time too. And I talked about how the more that we hook into other people combined with technology and social media, which we'll talk about in different ways in the world, I bet, just leaning on other people, especially through technologized media, it doesn't increase our peace, it just increases our grievance. And so that's not the full picture either. And I quoted a guy named Charlie Warzel who wrote over the summer about how we live increasingly in grievance echo chambers of our own making. So the solution's not going to be there either. Pat, are we just in our own grievance echo chamber here at And Another Thing with Jim?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. That's really all it is. Eagles,
Nice.
AI, we're just haters, just miserable.
Yep, totally.
Talking to the podcast void.
There we go. And just as a little bit of a bonus, Warzel was talking more recently about are you familiar with the term AI psychosis?
Yeah, like I think so. I think is it kind of just someone kind of just losing themselves to like AI and AI kind of like controlling them? Well, let me just say that not exactly. I've heard the term enough and like in context, but I don't know it exactly. So let me say no, Jim. What is that?
Okay. So you're getting delectably warm there. The as a technical term, it's being refined, and there are some, I think, medical people and otherwise legal that are uncomfortable with the term AI psychosis. But even if it's not going to be the final form of what it's called, it's when people have AI companions, which we've talked about here
Hmm.
over the past few months, that increasingly untether people to reality. And the AI chatbots slash companions reinforce just crazy ideas about the world and say, yes, 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 you're absolutely right. And that's becoming more and more of a thing that, including for legal or criminal purposes, is that is it fair to consider somebody criminally insane? I don't know if that's the current term or not, but broadly speaking, if AI made me do it, does that actually lessen somebody's responsibility or not? But they think they're living in the real world when AI is giving them a reality in which they're enveloped, which is not the real world at all.
That will be some interesting case law and some cases in the near future. Um,
Oh,
but yeah, along with that, like really, when you get down to it, like would your life and problems improve by talking with friends for 5% more next week or God? And
hmm.
like, not that you can just kind of just narrow it all down to that, but I think that
It's a good
probably
way of
more,
putting it.
whatever, maybe you get kind of like a small win talking with others, or maybe kind of like don't. Maybe like it's not great to talk to certain people,
Hmm.
and in that grievance culture, but it's kind of, in some ways, the more you kind of like talk to God as opposed to maybe talk to other people could kind of
Hmm.
be a simple way is like, well, what do you think is going to be more beneficial or what has been more beneficial in your life? You know,
That's really good. So from Pat legal to Pat pastoral right there. I think that's true. Like even when I was on one of my recent jogs, when I was going blindingly fast through blistering cold, I had the moment of recognition when I was in my own feelings about something that I was really frustrated by, but realized that I hadn't asked Jesus for help to process, and that Jesus would help me carry some of the things that I'm was being frustrated by. And I had spent a number of days being frustrated by something that I actually hadn't prayed about. So from the last thing, let's say this is the last thing with word before we go into world.
yeah.
I was, if I said on Sunday, let Jesus carry you and whatever's weighing you down, part of my sermon preparation this past week was realizing that I was actually not doing that. And I needed to look up and let Jesus do that more.
Okay. The final word. There you go.
Done. And now let's go on to World before Pat introduces the topic for us today. We are giving the disclaimer that, hey, this is us shooting from the hip with what's going on culturally, trying to apply biblical lenses to things around us. And the give and take, the trade-off is that as we try to think in more or less real time about these things, these are tentative and not definitive conclusions, but that gives us some freedom to try different ideas on for size as we try to make sense of our crazy world, including this topic today.
Yeah, Jim. So on this podcast and really in life, we talked about how like things are getting worse.
Yes.
And we're going to kind of mostly focus on like culture and less on like more serious issues, although we can delve into that if we want to as well.
Okay.
But
We'll see what happens.
we talked about how like movies are getting dumber, they're getting flatter, the color's terrible. Every movie looks like it was made on like a Netflix like lot in Georgia.
Have you seen some of those? And this is me
Yeah,
cutting you off. Sorry
no,
about
go for
that.
it.
There's been a couple of longer form YouTube videos about
Yes.
how how movies are just looking less good. So have you seen some of those?
Yeah, yeah, and they're absolutely true. It's just it's
Yeah.
like it's all like the verbiage and all like the technical like wording for that of what you see. It's like you can't explain it, but you see it, and it looks like everything looks terrible.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah,
Good
movies,
job. Keep going.
movies. Yeah, music. It's been like a while. The same Swedish producers, are on every pop track. There's algorithms to kind of like, for the how you do the chord transitions to kind of make it, all that good
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
TV, there has to be certain action, certain amount of points that people don't look at their phone too much. Books, now there's AI books. So like, the funny thing I thought is if like, what if one of your friends came up to you, he didn't really know is like a writer, and they're like, yeah, I made this like book. You'd probably think it was AI, right?
Yeah.
This is, you'd be like, well, obviously AI. So it's just,
Yes.
so a lot of those things are kind of like getting worse or they're problematic. Is there anything, not strictly culture, but like, what are things, where are things getting better? And are there any at all?
Uh, when you shot this question over to me earlier today, Pat, I appreciated the question, and I think it is a good opportunity for us to say not only the sky is falling all the time,
Yes.
and I was compelled by the question. If so many things are getting worse all the time, shout out to our fallen world that we live in. What's getting better? So I have some quick hits and then some things that are getting better. Then I want to talk more about what's mixed and then talk about what's next. So let's do it that way. I still have three parts from here, Pat.
All right.
So what's getting better? Let's just keep in mind, and we said that we weren't going to talk on a ton of different things, but just to observe, lots of things have gotten better over the years. So technology is getting better and not worse. Mixed bag, but getting better. Medicine is getting better. Communication is getting better. Travel is getting better. Lifespans are getting longer. And entertainment options are certainly multiplying. So yeah, there's a lot to celebrate. And this is Creation Horizon, the cultural mandate for human beings where God calls us to be creators, and part of being made in the image of God is that we innovate and we create new things, a lot of things that make our world better. So before we do Sky is Falling too much, I don't know how many of us, I guess it's a genuine question, not a rhetorical one, would prefer to be born in medieval Europe or feudal Japan or wherever around the world 1,000 years ago. I think there's a lot of things that we take for granted and or complain about that are better. The and maybe one bottom line for the lots is better. We do have a lot more optionality with with a lot of different things. The downside there, optionality possibility, is that I think we can sometimes, at least here in the West, have the illusion of complete optionality and total malleability of our own reality, which negates the fact that God has made us with limits. But sure, a lot's better, and let's not lose sight of that.
Um, so I think there are some things that are certainly better. Let's take like the medical field or
Yeah,
different things like retinal implants or new vaccines. Like I
yeah,
think for sure that's like a great step forward. But then I think at the same time, like health insurance is like super unaffordable right now.
totally.
And so, like I think there are like it's kind of like, you know, I don't know how many steps forward, how many steps back, or where that kind of equilibrium works out. But if, we have like this great care and these great things we can do, but only like a certain percent of the population can get it, and the rest, can't afford medical care or can't afford good medical care. I
Yeah.
wonder how all that like kind of turns out, or even for people who can afford it, it's just like much more and more of their,
Hmm.
um, monthly income goes towards it. But I think that's fair that there certainly is like some breakthrough improvements, like and like rapid ones, like really like life-changing ones that happen there. So
Yeah.
can't really disagree on that. And I think probably it's just expectations. So
Hmm.
I think we just know too much. We compare ourselves to too many people because we see everything.
Yeah.
If you're living in 1874, you don't really know how people live truly, maybe in another state or another country or another
Hmm.
continent. And, even if your life isn't too great, you might, your expectations aren't really high. So maybe you're at like a 4 out of 10, but you're like, yeah, I'm a 4 out of 10. Now, if you're like a 4 out of 10, you see everybody in the world living like an 8, 9, or 10, and you're like, man, this sucks. I wish I was back kind of in the, in the 50s or, in the Victorian age or whatever. And your life would be worse. For sure
Hmm.
would be worse, but maybe you wouldn't feel it's worse. Maybe you would. I don't know. But expectations, I think, plays a part for sure as well.
I agree. And to use that same numerical scale illustration, if 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, we recognized that our life might be a 4 out of 10, now it feels like we're a 4 out of 100 or a
Mm,
4 out of 1,000.
sure. Yeah.
Since there's so many things,
Hmm.
we know so much more about what we don't have or what we're not or what we're lacking. And I think that's real. The illusion again of total optionality or opportunity when it's not there. Yeah, I get that, and I feel that. I don't have an answer for it. Let's just move on to another aspect. The so some genuine positives here, and I don't mean that just to make sure, Pat. I didn't mean that dismissively of what you're
No,
talking about.
no, let's
I
let's
think
move
that's all
on.
true.
Yeah,
The okay, so we agree that we solved it then, and
as always.
some genuine positives to finding community, and this goes to the culture piece. I think it's much easier to say that I've either in some life-changing or life-saving ways for at least by people's self-assessment, it's a lot easier to find your tribe and find things that are interesting to you from big things to small things. So Pat, we mentioned last week Stranger Things. We're still on the Stranger Things high of being back in that world. I hope you're enjoying as much as I am some recap videos and podcasts that are going through the four episodes that we've seen. Were you much of a Dungeons and Dragons guy or
Absolutely
RPG?
not.
Okay.
No, no, no. I mean,
Nice.
it always sounded cool. In hindsight, it looks cool, but
Yeah,
no, I was just recreating the Christian Leitner turnaround shot in 1991 like a million times. No,
I like that. Duke, Kentucky.
yeah,
I saw that game live. Did you see that game live?
yep, yeah. I was a youngin.
Okay. Nice. I was at a soccer tournament in like Alexandria, Louisiana, and we were at a Chili's. I think it was a Saturday night, and we were all watching the game
That's got to be a core memory right there.
on TV.
Wow.
It really is. The so I I was a this is complicated. I was a role-playing wannabe, but also a role-playing scaredy cat, where there was part of me that thought I should like role-playing games. And so I had a couple buddies that were into Dungeons and Dragons. Marvel Comics also had a Marvel role-playing game that but the couple times, I shouldn't say every time to imply that there were hundreds of these opportunities when I would sit down with some friends to actually do Dungeons and Dragons and Marvel, it was just deadly boring to me, and I just didn't get the allure. Maybe it was my short attention span, but there was part of me on one hand that wanted to get it and really enjoy it, but then there was on the other hand the couple of times where I had appointments to go play role-playing games, I didn't tell anybody. So, Jim, do you want to hang out on Friday night? And I would say, or with this couple of times that I have in mind here, I sure as heck did not tell any of my other buddies I can't hang out or go out tonight because I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons or Marvel. I concealed that because I didn't, it was nerdy
Yeah,
and we live in an age where nerddom is more acceptable and
yeah,
also
rules. Yeah,
right and then more than that, for whatever niche interest I could possibly have, I can find an online community that would make me feel, or common parlance, known, seen, etc. And there's a lot of good in that. So I think finding interests and interested community is enabled and accelerated by internet, social media in a lot of different ways. But then the obvious downside, the this community tends to be thinner. Sociologists call it weak ties, and it can be very often it can become its own echo chamber to amplify tribalism, where you find a lot of empathy, but then the empathy giveth and the empathy taketh away, where we burrow down into our own sub niche of community where we experience great empathy. And this is the Charlie Warzel quote that I won't take the time to read, but it actually makes us angrier at people who aren't of our tribe and who don't see things like we are. Last thing I'll say, and I'll turn it back over to you here. Paul Dano has been in the news
poor
lately.
Paul Dano.
I have a, I have a couple of text threads from high school buddies and who are having fun with Paul Dano right now. Paul, thanks for being a good sport. So Quentin Tarantino, the famous auteur, just made Paul Dano a punching bag just out of the blue. I don't really understand, but his Riddler character in the Batman movie, the Matt Reeves Batman movie that came out a few years ago. Did you happen to catch that Batman movie?
I'm a big Batman fan, and
Okay.
I quite enjoyed that movie. I will
Yeah,
say.
me too. I thought it was great. So you remember the scene Paul Dano plays the Riddler. I think Paul Dano played the Riddler very well in
Yeah,
that
he was
movie.
good.
Thank you, Quentin, very much. The how before the Riddler does his, and I it's just close enough that let's not try to spoil too much of
Yeah.
the Batman. But before the Riddler does his last dastardly act of the movie, he goes on social media and
Hmm.
addresses all of his followers and his community, saying, "Thank you so much for being supportive of me in this process. It's been a journey, and I think it's a really skillfully done scene that knows what it's doing, is self-aware. Uh, it doesn't offer the movie is not designed to offer solutions to this, but the in today's moment, even though this was a couple of years ago, the Riddler has discovered found family in the social media community, which feels great, but then it's helping him feel emboldened to kill a ton of people at the same time. So I thought that was a really skillful encapsulation of the positives and negatives of the community that we can find in the online world right now. So mixed bag. The positives are genuinely positive. The negatives are genuinely negative.
Yeah, and I think that's still like some of the overhang from like the early internet. I guess like internet 1.0, I will say, is like,
Yeah.
you can learn things and find people and things that you didn't know were out there, weren't accessible to your fingertips, like music and
Yep.
different, again, people who like the same thing. And I will say, like, I don't agree with Quentin Tarantino, but I like the fact that he says stuff like that. Just like
Yeah.
completely is just like fires from the hip. He's just a madman. I think he's an awesome director, so I kind of like that. Although if I was Paul Dano or Matthew, is it Lillard?
Yeah.
Um, I might not be too happy. But then again, they probably get a lot of support now. And maybe
Yeah.
someone, I'm sure Quentin Tarantino has some enemies in Hollywood, so maybe someone's going to cast them in roles just to kind
Right.
of spite him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, there is um, a lot of basically ability to kind of like be with other people, find other people, and then also kind of like a lot of things have been like democratized, so you can
Hmm.
make music now for probably like
Yep.
$100. You can, really, some people are making movies with iPhones or part movies with iPhones, and
Totally.
so
Yeah.
so there are, some of those things that have helped out and made everything kind of, anyone can do this. So yeah, there certainly are wins there as well.
Yeah.
In addition to now the fact that everybody can make music. Is that a great thing? Maybe, maybe not, but you don't have to listen to it.
Yeah.
What does it hurt you if someone makes music in their, in GarageBand and they, 50 people ever hear it? Good for them.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. And like, you're probably never going to hear it. So what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two more things. This is fun for me to talk about, Pat. I'll limit myself to two more things. I just finished, it was one of my longer term nonfiction books, a book about beatnik culture. I'm looking up the title of it right now. Sort of a counterculture in New York in the 1960s and 1970s. Everything is now. The 1960s New York avant-garde, primal happenings, underground movies, radical pop. The the it's just kind of going through counterculture, 60s up into the 70s, and things that I didn't realize. The MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, was considered a villain by 1960s radicals because it had sold out and was totally part of the establishment. And Emily and I happened to be at the MoMA a couple of weeks ago. I might have mentioned that on one of our podcasts
Hmm.
recently. And to to me, part of the unwashed mass, to me, it feels avant-garde and cutting edge. And there's some things as you get to the present day at the MoMA, some things I think are awesome there, but other things I just sit there thinking, I don't understand what is this is too avant-garde for me to comprehend. I don't hate it, but it doesn't connect because it's just so out there.
Yeah.
But as as far back as 50 years ago, people were saying that the what was really out there was just, Momo was being considered Starbucks by people by people 50 years ago. So that everything old is new again as far as what one person's, treasure is another person's trash. And then secondly, this is where we ask there to be a trade-off. Where we could speak from the hip at least a little bit with the Dano discourse. To me, the everything is so performative and predictable, and I guess let's let this run into the last thing that I was want to say, wanted to say what's next, where I I do there was something, so I don't support and affirm Quentin Tarantino is just criticizing a random actor for no reason. But there is part of me that appreciates the fact that it's not so buttoned up and polished and everything sanitized, every edge on every rock tumbled down to nothing. So, oh, here's somebody being honest about an actor that he doesn't like. Paul Dano can take it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's fine. Let's not villainize Quentin Tarantino as this evil man. The and this is where Emily says I spend too much time texting with my high school friends. The 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 rallying of support to Paul Dano, on the other hand, also is, at least for this boomer, eye roll at the same time, where, man, like Paul Dano's gonna be fine. Do we the performative backlash and support where like Paul Dano, I love you so much and you're amazing. I just kind of think that's fine. And it there's just an overwhelming fakeness to the whole shenanigans that I think we're going to burn out on. So what's next is burnout, but I think it's good burnout. Do you have any final thought? This really took a Paul Dano turn here.
Yeah, I know.
I,
So,
but you feel free to interject before we get to this last part.
um, so I think my take, and I just kind of thought of this, is I think maybe the rallying of support to Paul Dano is the fact that, and no shots at Paul Dano, he's maybe not the most attractive like movie star out there.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's fair.
so I wonder if people, you
Not
kind
like
of look,
us.
exactly. You kind of look at Paul Dano, and you might be like, okay, he's kind of like looks a little sullen, a little bit sad,
Yeah,
a little bit meek. And
right.
so I wonder if he said this about like Colin Farrell or,
Hmm.
or like Brad Pitt, if people wouldn't really feel the need as much to kind of get up because be like, ah, Colin Farrell is Colin Farrell.
Yeah,
He
he'll
knows,
be just
yeah,
fine.
he knows what he's like. He knows what he looks like, all that. So I wonder if maybe a little bit it's like, oh, Paul Dano does kind of look like a little forlorn character in some ways.
Hmm.
That's maybe part of the rallying cry. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's just a
Yeah.
bunch of softies like, oh, and that type of thing that you're on to. So that could be possible.
And then here, this is the tangent to the tangent. And listeners, thank you for humoring pop culture junkies like Pat and me. This is why you tune in. The if we could script out kind of the next act, and I'm not saying this will happen, but I'm not saying it won't happen. The next act for Paul Dano is that he makes a comeback, and I don't know what he's been up to more recently acting wise, but he's gonna come back better and stronger than ever. But it's possible that part of that is that Paul Dano is gonna hit the effing gym and and if he's put on a couple of pounds, he's gonna be tan tone cut,
Yeah.
coming for blood at Quentin Tarantino. But then also, if he if he comes back a leaner, meaner physical version of himself, then that's feeding the same sort of appearance-based plastic nature of reality also, while he's pushing back against it at the same time. So it is this endless regression of, yeah, turtles all the way down when it comes to discourse in this moment. Any
Yeah,
thoughts
yeah,
there?
yeah, you're right. I don't want to see him with like 8% body fat in like a boxing movie in like a year and a half from now. I don't, I don't need to see that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think you're right there. Two other really quick thoughts is
Uh,
not on Paul Dano, but on the fact of about
yeah.
selling out is funny how when I grew up in like punk and like rock and hardcore bands in like the late 90s, like selling out was a big thing, like big
Totally.
no-no.
Yeah.
And now no one cares. There's commercials, your favorite bands, your favorite actor, whoever in culture, they're on, ads, commercials. And it certainly bothers some people, but
Yeah.
it's kind of excusable in some ways because it is tougher to make a living as like a creative out there.
Yeah.
But it does seem like selling out is a thing of the past or being upset about it. It is what it is. And then
Yeah.
we were talking about kind of, and I think maybe this can be summed up is people are always like, lost is always more valuable than what's gained. So
Hmm.
perhaps people in general, um, you know, talk about things in the 90s or 2000s now as like something that was taken from them. And yeah, they've
Hmm.
gotten some wins, but like you can never like what they've lost is so much more valuable than what's gained. So maybe that's also playing a role in generally some of the, the sky is falling stuff when maybe the sky isn't quite falling.
I think that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the last part of the trifecta here for me, Pat, is the good news and the bad news is that some of these trends are moving faster and faster and faster, but I think that moves us closer to like a healthy burnout where the the upshot of life getting worse faster is that life is going to get worse faster, and we could already be turning a corner for people wanting more than what is being offered to them in day-to-day reality right now, including, churches are touting these studies that say that people are more open to spiritual realities. The present moment holds less promise than it used to, and I think there's an opportunity for deeper realities and for people looking up again and being open to what Jesus offers them. And I know that that sounds simplistic and trite, but I think that's already happening a little bit where people are coming to a place of burnout with what's being purveyed to them, culturally speaking, from a lot of different corners, not just one side of the aisle or the other. And yeah, we need more than what we're being given right now, and Jesus offers it.
No, I
So there.
agree. Yeah, I agree. The cleansing fire has been ignited, so let's get it on.
That's right.
All
Okay,
right.
well that's all I had for World.
All right, let's go to wild card. A little bit of a
More Paul
short,
Dano.
yeah. So who is your favorite current Phillies sports person? Oh, I'm sorry, Philly, not Phillies, not Philly,
Okay.
Philly. Who's your favorite Philly sports person right now? And the quick follow-up is, it seems like culture is just like about, well, I was thinking like what could be someone's favorite Philadelphian right now, and I felt, of
Yeah.
course, it's going to be like a sports figure. And so, do you have any outside of sports, like Philadelphia or like New Jersey people, aside from like Bruce Springsteen, who's like very
Yeah.
relevant now? Someone would say, "Oh, this is my favorite Philly person." So that's the two questions: favorite Philly sports person right now, and is
Yeah.
there someone outside of sports that could even be close to holding that title?
Huh. Good question. The recording is not frozen, everybody. I'm just thinking.
While you think about that for a second,
Yeah.
Bryce Harper is my current favorite Philly sports person, and he's held
Okay.
that belt for a few years now. Just like everyone says, I do think he is the prototypical um, Philly
Yeah.
guy. Everything about him, I don't need to go over all the aspects of what I like
Yeah.
about him, and even in his recent struggles, I'm still through and through a big Bryce Harper fan. So Bryce Harper would be my pick personally.
That's awesome. And good for him for getting new blood.
Yeah, I did see that.
Literally. So
The Peter
that's
Thiel experiment. Yeah.
that's great job by him. So I'll go chalk on this one and say somebody like a Brandon Graham, where
Okay.
where approval rating through the roof.
Yeah.
He's both a Mack truck, but then also a deer that has no natural enemies. And I like a guy like that. One step farther, let's say Philly sports adjacent. Give me a John Kruk,
Ooh,
and I think
legend.
I think he's not necessarily the best baseball analyst out there, but I was watching on, this is me late night YouTube here, a super cut of inappropriate John Kruk jokes from only the past season alone, and this guy is, speaking of wild cards, a constant wild card who I don't agree with all of his takes, but he he keeps it real, and I appreciate that in 2025. Beyond that, let me take and this is a little bit of a 2017 called. and wants your reference back. But give me like a Michael Solomonoff, somebody who does like a Philly restaurateur that does interesting things. Ahab is one of my all-time favorite restaurants, and for somebody that puts Philly on the map culturally, I will take it. And then last thing I'll say, oh, I'm feeling momentum here. The dishonorable mention happens to be the either the director or the president of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, who was unceremoniously fired a couple months ago for spending millions upon millions of dollars on a rebrand of changing the nomenclature of Philadelphia Museum of Art to Philadelphia Art Museum and seemingly angering everybody and spending a ton of money. So
Wow.
I I I appreciate how she just went for it, and I do love the museum, whether it's called the Philadelphia Museum of Art or the Philadelphia Art Museum, totally different.
Yeah, that's a big L right there. Michael Solomonoff, I wonder if 2% of the Philly, New Jersey population knows who that is. I don't think it's a bad um, name
Yeah.
out there. But I think it's just, yeah, probably so limited as far as who actually knows who that is. And probably maybe their impact is probably greater than their name recognition. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for broadening my appeal right there, Pat. I appreciate it.
Um, in 5 years, if you
Yeah.
had to project, who is the biggest Philly sports figure, and
Oh,
maybe it's someone who's not even on the teammates when they draft, but anybody
yeah.
who's like right now, anyone you think is waiting in the wings.
Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah,
I think that one's easy. So he's the prince that was promised. If all goes right, which it always does in Philly sports, I think Tyrese Maxey is going to be the the next never has to buy a beer in Philly ever again if he's not already there. So good luck to Tyrese for this next season.
yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I do think Saquon Barkley had it like he
Oh
had a
yeah,
high approval rating, and then for better or worse, I think he met with Trump or something like that. And I think, whether or not you should do that or whether or not it was just like, hey, listen, he's the president. And, I'm not going
he
to
did
talk
take a
about,
hit. Yeah,
yeah, I'm not going to talk about whether he
as
should
far
have
as
done that or not. Yeah, I really don't
public eye with
care.
that.
But
Yeah.
some people do care about that. And so,
Yep.
and the fact that, he's not playing very well this year doesn't help either.
It's a tough
We don't need
business.
to talk about that anymore.
Yep.
All
But
right.
that's a good wild card. Well, hey everybody, thanks for listening. I felt like because we were starting our recording over again, Pat, that this would be a tight episode, but Paul Dano's on me. So thanks to listeners, thanks to Pat, thanks to Paul. See you next time.